Hi guys, how are you doing today? Welcome back to a random lifestyle vlog. If you're new here, my name is Paulina. This channel is all about beauty and today we're going to review the newest Natasha Denona palette. So this is what it looks like. I heard this palette was actually inspired by liquid metals and I think the packaging actually reflects that pretty well. And it's supposed to be the new elevated version of this palette that was released several years ago. This is the classic gold palette that seems to be one of the most loved palettes by Natasha Denona. So let's start with comparing these two. As you can see, there is a difference in size. This is one of Natasha's large palettes. The new one comes in this midi size that I think seems to be like the main size of Natasha's palettes recently, which is a good thing because the main difference between these two is that the new size has like smaller pans, but it comes with a much smaller price tag as well. As far as the shades go, let me show you the new one first. So this is what it looks like. And here we have the original gold palette. So here we have these two palettes together. This one up here is the new golden palette and this is the classic gold. As you can see, the pans are much larger here, but we can also see some substantial differences between these two. The gold palette on the bottom has some teal shades included. It's generally a little bit darker, and I'm not going to lie, on the first look it does seem a little bit more interesting than the new palette. Whereas this new golden palette, it's definitely much more modern. It's giving me this like a warm toned nude with some golden sparkle, kind of like this golden hour summer glow type. And because of this kind of like a nudie quality, it's going to be much easier to use than this palette. Whereas with this one, you can definitely be a little bit more creative. There's one more thing I need to mention. There is a reason for this palette to be a new version of this palette. There are some repeats, and there's quite a lot of them. Let me show you. So the shades from this gold palette that you're going to find in the new golden palette are these. These 6 over here, these 2, and then this one over here. So out of 15 shades in this palette, there are 9 shades that are repeated, and then we have 6 new shades. So since I mentioned that this palette looks very nude to me, let's compare it to some other nude-ish palettes by Natasha Denona. So I'm obviously going to start with the most nude palette ever, which is I Need a Nude, and this is what it looks like. And here's a comparison to this new golden palette. So as you can see, they both have this nude quality. This one is very neutral, this one is definitely warm toned. And we also have Glam palette, which is this very cool toned nude-ish palette as well. And here we have another comparison. I think these ones are kind of like polar opposites. This one is very cool toned, this one is very warm toned. This actually kind of makes sense. So we have this trio of nude-ish palette. We have one that's very neutral, and we have one that's cool toned and one that's more like warm toned. Makes sense, but I'm not really too surprised. I feel like with Natasha Denona's palettes, they do make sense. You might need them or not, you might like the color story or not, but they always make sense in a way that they always seem to bring something new to the table. Alright, so I think it's time for the swatches, let's do that. I'm just going to start up here to make sure that I have enough space. So I'm starting with Mliko, and this is Matte Cream Powder Off-White. Ooh, that is a lovely pigmentation for such a light shade. That is a good start. Then we have Nubia, and that's Sparkling Foiled Gold Nude Champagne. Pana Matte Cream Powder Beige. Aria Matte Medium Light Dusty Sand. Then we have Fizzy, and this is Sparkling Wet Effect Golden Nude. Faris Metallic Medium Antique Brass. Aura Metallic Golden Ivory. Teak Matte Medium Dusty Caramel. Cava, and this is Sparkling Champagne Gold. Sandstone Matte Medium Ochre, this is the shade. Aurum Metallic Muted Gold. And Log, and this is Matte Dark Brown. Oro Metallic Warm Gold. Flesh Matte Light Warm Nude. And Alchemist, which is Metallic Brass. And there you go, these are all the swatches. I mean, I can't really stop looking at this one. Look how shiny it is. Okay, I'm not going to lie, this actually looks and feels pretty good. Everything swatched really nicely, and I think the formula of these shades is stunning. And I swatched the 6 new shades separately. So as you can see, these are the 3 sparkly new shades, and then we have 3 mattes. The matte here in the middle doesn't really seem that much visible on my skin. I think this one is called Pana. but everything else looks pretty good, I would say. And just to clear things up, we have these 6 new shades instead of these 2 teal shades over here, the duochrome over here, this brassy shade here, the mustardy matte, and this white gold over here. We do have like a similar white gold shade in the new palette, but it has like a bit different formula. It does swatch a little bit differently. This one works more as a topper. It does not really have that much pigmentation, but it has a very visible sparkle, whereas the new one is a little bit more pigmented, and it's giving a little bit more of this kind of metallic look. Okay, so it seems like there's nothing else left to do but to use it on my face, so let's do that. Okay, so I did my right eye off camera so that at least I know what I'm doing, so let's try and recreate that on the other eye. And I'll share my thoughts with you as we go. So I think I mentioned that before, that this looked like a very easy to use palette, and I can confirm that it really is. We have lots of kind of like very neutral mattes that you can use on top of each other and build them, so that is super easy to do. I started with the shade over here, which is Pana, and this is the shade that did not really show that much on my skin, so I thought this was going to be a really nice base shade. So I'm applying this shade all over my eyelid. And as you can see, it's not really particularly visible. Then I'm going a bit darker. I'm using Flesh shade here in my crease. And this one, as you can see, shows quite nicely. And then I'm going to slowly build this shade up. So I'm going to use Sandstone next, then I'm going to move to Aria, and then to Teak. So this is what we're going to do. I'm starting with Sandstone, and I'm just building it up. And obviously, while I'm building the shade up, I'm covering a little bit smaller area of my eyelid with every single application, so that we have this kind of like nice gradient here. And once I'm done with a particular shade, I'm just blending everything with a clean brush. So we're moving on to Aria, that's a little bit darker. And then finally, we're moving on to Teak. So as you can see, these mattes go really well together. They just blend very easily. You don't really need any special technique. It's just like a very easy to use palette. So even if you're a beginner, this definitely looks like a really good palette to start with. The formula is so far amazing, but to be honest, it's kind of like to be expected when you're buying Natasha Denona eyeshadow palette. So now I'm moving on to the darkest matte, which is this one over here, that's Log. And I'm going to track my lash line with it. I'm going to start with my upper lash line. I'm not going all the way to my eye corner, I'm just going to stop around here. And then the same thing on my lower lash line. And I'm trying to stay very close to my lash line here, like this. Now I'm going to use this shade over here, which is Varys, and I'm going to smudge this lower lash line a little bit with it. Okay, now I'm going to use this lightest matte over here, Mliko, and I'm going to apply this one under my brow to kind of like emphasize the brow bone a little bit. And I'm obviously going to blend these shades together. Okay, so let's continue with shimmers now. I honestly did not really know what to choose, but I really loved this shade over here, which is Nubia. So I started with this one. I just applied this with my finger all over my eyelid. So this is what it looks like now. I wanted more sparkle, so I decided to top it up with this one over here. This is Fizzy, and this is pretty kind of like dry shade, but not necessarily dry in a bad way. It's more like this kind of like a topper formula, more like it. So you can easily apply it as a topper on top of like whatever you want to enhance a little bit. So this is where we are now, but I still wanted more, so I decided to use this shade over here, which is Oro, and I applied it on this outer part of my eyelid. And to finish it off, I decided to use this shade over here, Aura, in my inner corner. And that's it. Let me just add some eyeliner and mascara off camera, and I'll be back with you to share my final thoughts. Alright, so I'm back with my finished makeup, and here are my final thoughts. So, the new Golden palette. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it worth buying? I mean, the quality of this palette is, in my personal opinion, worth the price tag. These eyeshadows are really high quality, the pigmentation is right, we have different formulas, but they all work perfectly, everything blends super nicely, so the quality is definitely there. This palette is definitely very easy to use, and as with every single one of Natasha's nude palettes, you can create this very casual everyday look, as well as one that's like properly glamorous. So with that in mind, I would describe this palette as pretty versatile, easy to use, good quality palette. Does this release make sense? I think it does. I think it makes perfect sense as one of those kind of like 3 nude-ish palettes by Natasha Denona, and as such I do think it does make sense. Do you need it though? That's another question. If you don't have the original gold palette and you like the look of the kind of like warm-toned nudie shades with some sparkle, then obviously it makes perfect sense to get it. But what if you have this palette? You do have to keep in mind that 9 shades out of 15 are the same in these 2 palettes. So with a new one, you're getting 6 new shades. The new shades that you're getting are like 3 lighter mattes, which I think are quite useful in this palette. And then you get 3 new shimmers. 2 of those are kind of like this coppery gold shade. So whether this is something you need or not, whether it's actually worth spending money on another palette if you have the old one, that's for you to decide. And to be 100% honest with you guys, I think if it wasn't for this channel, I probably would skip on this palette, even though I do think it's beautiful. Anyway, these are all my thoughts about this new Natasha Denona Golden palette. What do you think? Have you tried any of these palettes? Do you own the original gold palette? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you very much for watching. For more makeup related content, check those videos over here. I'm going to see you very soon. Take care. Bye.